Hey guys, welcome to Juicy Tea, where I read out the best stories on Reddit, so you don't have to. The funny, shocking, and satisfyingly juicy. Welcome back to this insane saga. If you didn't see part 1, I've linked it in the description. Go watch that first, so you can see the chaos unfold from the start. Alright, let's get into it. Update 1. I've spent the last 5 years imagining different scenarios based on different ways I could go about this, if I ever decide to act on it. I previously said that I was going to do a secret DNA test, but in the end, I couldn't go through with it. And now I'm regretting that, because the window to do so has essentially closed. I just felt like it would be out of line for me to do that to another person's child behind their back. Ethically, it was a little dicey. I've since consulted with my lawyer, as many people suggested, and she advised against me doing so, because no matter what the results were, it would make me look bad in the potential divorce proceeding. But I really wish I'd done it anyway and just not told anyone. Because I really badly need to know, and I still don't know for sure. Likewise, I wanted to tell Sophie in confidence, but the more I thought about it, even that seemed over the line. Like, I had no right to plant such ideas in her mind about her father without even talking to him first. So what I ended up doing was confronting Luke and Amy. Many comments suggested this as well. I finally told both of them that we need to have a serious talk. I didn't want to approach just one of them because I figured they'd just tell the other what happened. Once all the kids were at school, I laid out all my suspicions and the reasons. I made it clear how much I love both of them, but I noticed similarities between Luke and Amy's children, and I didn't even list all of them in the original post. For example, Luke is a sleepwalker, and so is Sophie, Tom, and Adam. I said over and over how much they meant to me, and how I didn't want to believe it, but the thought had crept into my mind in the past. How I'd dismissed it before, but now, with Tom and Sophie having crushes on each other, it became necessary to ask the question. So I asked them if they'd ever crossed the line, if Luke had ever been unfaithful, and if there was even the slightest possibility that any of Amy's children were his. I was just trying to not cry. Well, they reacted exactly as I expected they would. Their responses were perfect and so very well rehearsed. I genuinely can't tell if it was honest emotion or powerful gaslighting. Amy was more upset than Luke, or at least more outwardly upset. She was angry and offended at the accusation. Luke just seemed heartbroken by it. Maybe they were just acting, but I don't know. Somehow, they had reasonable responses to all of the points that I brought up. They asked questions that I didn't know how to answer. I had never objected to them having alone time before. Why did it suddenly bother me now? You already answered that. It had bothered you, but you only brought it up once you were worried about your kids committing incest. Do Amy's children really resemble Luke that much? Or are things like hair colour pretty basic traits to have in common? They have more similar traits that aren't pretty basic, like the unusual allergies? The whole family had always treated Amy and her children as part of our unit, and I had previously commended Luke for stepping up and being a father to Amy's kids since they didn't have one. Why was I now saying it was a bad thing? But you didn't say it was a bad thing. It's just suspicious for him to act like a father to them when you consider in all the other factors. What exactly did I want them to do? To tell the truth, to get a DNA test, and to stop having weird adult sleepovers? How could I think such a thing about them? And why had I waited so long to say something? All these questions are super manipulative and gaslighty. If you're gonna behave like you're having an affair, don't get mad at your partner for being suspicious. Luke was more understanding than Amy. He respected my feelings, or at least he acted like he did. Amy appeared to feel more betrayed by what I said. I ended up apologizing several times, even though I'm not sure I did anything wrong. If you find yourself apologizing when they're the ones that did something wrong, you're being gaslit. Luke also apologized for anything he'd done to indicate he was unfaithful, like sleeping at another woman's house. I asked Amy, if not Luke, then who had fathered her children? She snapped back that it was none of my business, and I could tell she was not in the mood to get personal or vulnerable with me after my accusations. I'm not proud to say that I lost my temper and said that after everything we'd done for her and her children, such information was not a lot to ask, and perhaps she owed it to us. I regretted these words as soon as I said them, but Amy shouted back that I had never done anything for her, that it was Luke and his parents who'd kept them afloat all these years, not me. But Opie's the one with the high income, not Luke. She went on a long tirade about how I always acted superior to her, which I don't believe I did, though it's possible I gave off that vibe unintentionally. To me, this sounds like a bunch of excuses she'd use to justify to herself why cheating with Luke is okay. Like, it's not OP who's been paying for my life. Luke's just been looking after his kids. She never did anything for me, so I don't owe her any loyalty. And she acts superior, so I'm justified in sleeping with her husband and putting her in her place. Like, these aren't things a friend would be thinking about you. Luke did his best to calm her down, but the room was still fraught with tension. I don't know, Reddit. I just don't know. It's driving me to the edge of madness. There is a way to be certain, of course. Not certain of my husband's fidelity, but of the paternity of Amy's children. So I asked Luke, for my own peace of mind, for the sake of our daughter and our family unit, if he could please just get a DNA test done, a paternity test. I went on to say that I knew he disliked and distrusted such things, but that I really needed this. I could see the pain in Luke's eyes. Maybe it was an act, but he did seem genuinely hurt that I was asking for this. That him giving me his word that he's always been faithful was not enough for me. But he very reluctantly agreed to participate in a DNA test. Unfortunately, Amy did not, and that's where we hit a roadblock. I was afraid of this. Amy was infuriated at the whole concept and told me in no uncertain terms that I would not be getting samples of her children's DNA, and basically told me to F off for asking, several times in several variations. I pressed Luke, and honestly, he was a bit useless, but probably right. He tried to convince Amy, but she wouldn't hear of it, and then he kind of shrugged to me when I pushed him for further support. He can't force her to get the test done, so if she refuses, that's really a dead end. Trust me, it is. I looked into this quite a bit and consulted with my lawyer. The problem is, Luke could, in theory, petition the court to demand a paternity test for Tom and the others. The issue is, to do this, he'd essentially be claiming he'd slept with Amy, and he believes her children could be his. But Luke has staunchly insisted that nothing has ever happened with Amy, that he's never cheated on me. Whether or not he's being honest about this is another story, but he'd essentially have to go on record and make a claim that he isn't prepared to make. He's quite certain the children aren't his, and has no intention of fighting for custody of them, so no judge is going to compel Amy to submit samples of her children's DNA. Luke doesn't want to take his best friend to court to prove something that, in his words, he already knows isn't true. He's asking me to please just let this go and trust him because pursuing this will fracture everything. I pestered him further about Tom and Sophie, insisted that I didn't want them dating. Luke agreed, and apparently Amy still agrees. Yeah, why is that? Why can't they date if they're really not siblings? Luke plans to have a talk with Tom and activate protective Papa Bear mode. He's going to remind Tom that in a couple of months when he turns 18, him being intimate with Sophie will literally be a crime. I wouldn't actually press charges against him, as I know he would never do anything against Sophie's will. But I'm not above implying the threat. Thankfully, Luke isn't either. I did ask him if he'd be open to potentially swiping some of Tom's DNA for a paternity test, but he was very hesitant about the idea. Like me, he viewed it as unethical. He also pointed out that if we were to do this and Amy found out, it would likely mean the end of our friendship. Luke believes that Amy and I could still reconcile and become friends again, and I can see how much he wants this. But if I did a DNA test on Tom, behind Amy's back, and she found out about it, I think she'd hit the roof, and I wouldn't entirely blame her. Though, I'd be very interested to see the results. They really do seem to have a watertight excuse for why Luke can't get a paternity test done. It even allows Luke to say he was willing to get the test done, but he just can't, cause they wouldn't want to offend Amy. Luke ended up going to see Amy and spending the night. Sorry, he what? Wait, let me get this straight. His wife comes to him, concerned that he might be cheating with his friend. His friend gets all offended, so he goes over to her home to comfort and reassure her, and spends the night? Way to reassure his wife that nothing's going on. How could she think they could do this? This is why she thinks you're cheating together. She's really not being unreasonable here. I know all of you are cringing and throwing up in your hands, and trust me, I wasn't happy about it. It ended up being a very long conversation, but he was adamant that he needed to perform damage control. So they spent the night together, with Luke maintaining that nothing happened. I didn't sleep a wink and kept texting him for updates. Far as I can tell, Amy will cool off, but she needs a little time. Luke and I talked things over when he came back the next morning. He should have talked things over that night. You're his wife, aren't you? It was an emotionally fulfilling conversation, and we ended up agreeing to take the kids, our kids, not Amy's, oh great, not his other family, to visit their grandparents for a few days. It was an impromptu visit, but we've done it before, and they were delighted to have us. I really just wanted to get our family to spend some time together, away from Amy's side of the family, so to speak. I always love getting to see my in-laws. I refer to them as Jim and Kat. I know Reddit is famous for stories about the mother-in-law from hell, but in my life, that can be further from the truth. I feel safe with them, to the point that when they noticed how distant Luke and I were, I confessed my fears to them. Here's where things got a little bit interesting. When I told them my suspicions, Kat just gave Jim this pointed look, and he gave a big dramatic sigh. So, it turns out, Kat had similar misgivings to mine, and genuinely suspected over the years that Luke and Amy were closer than they'd ever admit, and that they'd crossed the line in the past. Jim, on the other hand, simply refuses to even consider the idea. He's always insisted that Kat is seeing things that aren't there. He maintains that Luke and Amy are like siblings and would never do such a thing. As for the kids, they're doing alright. I don't know what Amy told her children, but I think the official version of events is that Amy and I had a fight and need a break from each other. That's what Luke and I told our children, and when pressed for more information, Luke did defend me and shut down the questions, saying it wasn't their business. I did try to talk to Sophie again, but she maintained that she wasn't dating Tom. To what degree that's actually true, I don't know, but she was going to remain close friends with him. While she isn't usually a disobedient child, she made it very clear that she was putting her foot down on this one. And to be fair, I can't really justify separating them or forbidding them from being friends. They've known each other for years. I'm kicking myself for not having done a secret test when I could have, even for my own peace of mind. Now I feel like I'm locked out of the only way to get definitive proof, one way or the other. Even if he never actually cheated, he's still a terrible partner. Going over and sleeping at the woman's house whom your wife suspects you're sleeping with? Seriously, dude?
Not a great plan.
Down in the comments, Interstellar Rebella says, he spent the night with her? I mean, I'm still on the fence. I really don't know if he's the father or not. But what I do know is, at minimum, Luke is stupid AF. His wife literally feels insecure and paranoid and suspicious. And what does he do? Immediately spends the night with a woman that his wife feels insecure, paranoid, and suspicious about. I mean, literally the stupidest thing he could have done. He should have spent the night calming his wife down, not Amy. Like, so insanely stupid. Even if he never cheated on you, he definitely doesn't respect you or your marriage, because that is not the behavior of someone who loves his wife and respects the marriage. Honestly, that's enough to divorce for me. It's my own personal boundary though. Obviously, everyone has their own boundaries, but I'd never be okay with my husband spending the night with another woman who's not family, unless it was absolutely necessary, like life or death or something serious. But to add on to that, he spent the night with another woman when 1. His wife asked him not to. 2. He's having the worst night of his marriage. 3. His wife feels hurt, vulnerable, and in distress. And 4. The woman in question is the reason for his wife's hurt and distress. He should have prioritized his wife in their marriage instead of his wife's friendship with the other woman? Like, huh? I take it back. Once I listed it all down, he wasn't being stupid. He was straight up cruel. Like, what he did was brutal. Opie also added in a comment, about a year ago, I suggested we do a home DNA kit just to see Luke's reaction. He was very staunchly against it. Didn't want the government to have our DNA. Kept saying ancestry tests were a scam anyway. I brought it up to Amy, and guess which one of us she agreed with? Guilty as Hell says, ask her son when he's over if he wants to do one with you and the kids, just for fun. I'll keep posting as updates come out, so stick around if you want to see how this ends. If you liked this video, please let me know, and subscribe for more juicy tea.